What's up, everyone, and welcome back. You are watching another episode of Well-Rounded Individual. I am your host, Adam Schindler. Guys, thank you so much for watching this show and always supporting it. Please, if you are watching right now, click the follow, like, or subscribe button below. It just helps me grow this show and helps me bring a better product. Today, I have another great guest for you. I'm super excited about this one because I have her book with me. She is the author of Dimensions, 100 Questions to Help You Understand Your Perspective. Quite an interesting thinker. Sadie Sanchez,
Hello.
welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just grateful and honored to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And I'm so happy that we were able to connect and make this happen because I saw you on a different show, Dorian's show, a few months ago, and followed you through your reels and everything that you post on socials, and you're very active there, and just the way that you think and the questions that you propose to your followers and to yourself and just to the world, really, to me, are so valuable, and it really helps you break down inside, in kind of almost understand who you are.
Yes.
Which is
That's the goal.
Your book does too, which is awesome. So thank you so much for being here. And I want to get into this book, but I want to ask you the first question. And that is, with the show being called Well-Rounded Individual, what are some attributes or things that you would characterize of what that describes?
So for me, I would say, because I thought about this question, I knew this was coming. I would say that a well-rounded individual is someone who nurtures and pours into all parts of the self and all versions of the self. We're very multifaceted beings, and so to pour into yourself physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I feel like is what makes us well-rounded. And I love that you're creating these conversations and really focusing on people as a whole and the different dimensions of people through these well-rounded conversations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that's the goal there too.
Yeah.
It's I've always been that type of person as well. I want to be, I wouldn't even say a jack of all trades, right? There are things that I'm better at than other things, just like everyone. We all have our real strengths and things that we have room for improvement on. But acknowledging that, being aware of it, and actively seeking to improve in all areas and things that can just be beneficial to you, to your loved ones, to your family, and to the world.
Absolutely. I think it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me more about you. I know that's a super broad question. Super broad question, but I mean, I just find you so interesting. You have written an amazing book, and
Thank you.
You're young, you're smart, you have all these things. How did you get to where you are? What are some influences in your life? How did you become this person, well-rounded person, who's able to navigate the world, but also help others navigate their world as well, in the form of just communication and also literature?
Such a good question, such a deep question. And a question I always struggle with because I feel like it's so hard to encapsulate, the entirety of my being and my journey and my experiences in such an expedited amount of time. But to take it all the way back to the beginning briefly, born and raised in Las Vegas. I grew up here, single mom. I've got several siblings, and I feel like, as a kid, I was always very highly imaginative and curious, and I was really blessed to be in an environment where that wasn't shut down, and my mom really gave me the freedom to explore myself a lot. But that doesn't mean I didn't struggle. I think that part of why I am where I am right now is that I learned a lot of hard lessons at a young age. I navigated a lot of difficult experiences at a young age and had to face parts of myself that were uncomfortable at a young age. And I think that that's kind of brought me full circle to where I am now and the work that I do. But as far as understanding perspective and sharing and helping other people understand their perspective, it was a very distinct moment that happened in 2020 that kind of paved the way for that. But life's interesting because, there's a quote, you have to live life forward, but it's only understood backwards. And as I continue forward in my life, I can see a lot of foreshadowing when I was younger of things that I'm doing now that didn't really make sense to me at the time. But I think it's just, it's who I am. It's an expression of my being.
I love that. And I couldn't agree with you more on that as well. Like, in the moment, things don't make sense. Maybe not always, but like
rarely.
A lot of times you're like, what is going on? Why? Why is this happening? This doesn't make any sense. But when a picture's being painted, it's never a masterpiece until everything's complete.
Yes, you step back and
you can
you
be
see.
like, oh, that actually makes sense now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a really like simple example of that in my early life as I look back, because my mom, she's kept a lot of like my drawings or pictures or things that I did. And even from the time I was really young, you look at the things that I was creating or drawing and it all had to do with the eyes. It was like eye portraits, eye murals, eyes. And I think that, there was something in me that wanted to be expressed, but it wasn't until I was older and had different life experiences that I was able to articulate things that I was feeling.
Oh, that's interesting. The eyes are the window to the soul, right?
Yes, I'm obsessed with eyes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there is just something about eyes that like you can almost like on like an exterior, you can see them and they're beautiful, but like there's a beauty to like what's behind them.
Absolutely.
As well, and like digging deeper and like that wonder and just a continual journey of like really learning.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
Yeah, for me, they're a window to a hidden world that I want to spend my life exploring.
I love that. and to bounce it back real quick as well, like you mentioned that when you were younger, you had to like overcome many things like at a young age, difficult experiences. And that's another thing as well. Like, just like you don't understand what's going on in the moment. And then you see, I don't know anyone that's like super interesting that I know that's had an easy road.
Right.
It's almost like it's a recipe for exceptionalism, right? When you're going through like difficulties and you're having to experience these types of things that are uncomfortable, and how you deal with them ultimately dictates, do I create this type of person that I want to be, that's like exceptional and interesting and can help others, or do I go down the other road, right? Because I personally know people have gone down both paths.
Yeah.
And I can't put my finger on the fork in the road and what leads to the fork in the road that leads one way and one the other. Do you have any type of perspective on that? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Maybe frame the question a little differently.
So,
I understand.
Like with these difficulties that we encounter, we all express that most people have difficult lives or difficulties, right? And how we handle them and accept them and learn from them takes us in a positive route or a negative route.
Right.
So I'm glad that everyone that I know that has become like this interesting person has taken these difficulties and grown from them.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to see how people go in both directions. I think that there's a lot of context framing why people make the decisions they do. People might not have the same access to tools, resources, support. Right. And I think that plays into it a lot too, but also, self-understanding and clarity of what you want and the decisions and choices that you're making. And so, I think that we're all faced with those forks in the road several times throughout life, but by equipping people with knowledge of themselves, it can help them make decisions when they get to those forks in the road.
Yeah, for sure. And you're doing a great job of that. I would recommend everyone get this book. I've already recommended it to multiple people. I know that I have friends that have like bought it for Christmas gifts and like are receiving it for Christmas gifts.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
So it's going to help a lot of people too.
Thank you.
So let's talk about just like let's dig into this a little bit.
Okay, let's do it.
So when did you decide to do this? Was it like this moment in 2020 where were you already working on the book, or is that like, how did you always know that you were going to be a writer?
No. I would say that I had a very untraditional route to publishing a book.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like, I have thoughts to say and I'm going to write and publish this book. I didn't even know that what I was doing was going to be a book until this year. So essentially what happened is in 2020, it was just a very divisive time politically, socially, and we were all seeing the ramifications of that. We saw it, you know, I express this in the book, but we saw it on a macro level between communities and leaders, but even on a micro level with, you know, family and friends are no longer talking because of difference in perspective. And that's when the light bulb kind of went off for me of like, we say this word so much. I hear this word, I use this word, but what is it? And that's when my exploration of perspective really began. And it was a very like distinct moment. And from there, it just began very casually. I was like, I just want to understand perspective. And so I started interviewing people. And at first it was just like friends. I sent out them like a Google form that was like, okay, tell me about where you grew up, and these very high level, deep questions that they were so kindly filling out on my Google form. But then it expanded from there, and I ended up interviewing a lot of people, just really trying to understand and wrap my head around what a perspective was. And then from there, I realized that, you know, I'm spending so much time trying to understand other people's perspectives, and mine is crumbling. I don't understand who I am. I'm struggling. I'm suffering internally. And I kind of paused what I was doing and began this journey of introspection and really just wanting to silence the war that was going on in my mind, because I was at a point that I was not feeling very okay. And I went on that journey, and it was a long process. I cut off all my hair. Like I completely I was like out with the old, in with the new. And it was a very, it was a long journey. It was a difficult journey. But eventually felt like I was coming out on the other side of that. And at the beginning of this year, I'm like, I've been on this path for the last 4 years. I do feel like I understand and interact with perspective in a way that's different from what I've seen and that can be helpful to others. And I just wanted to start sharing it. And so I started posting it on Instagram. I was like, I have these questions. I wanted it to be a journey. So I knew that I was going to be asking like a set amount of questions. I knew that I wanted it to be a full circle journey, but I felt like on social media it was going to be a way to reach people more and interact with what people's responses were. And so I just started posting. One day I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Here's 100 days of questions to help you understand your perspective. Follow along.
Right.
And I just started sharing short video clips on social media. And about day, I want to say like 12 or 14, somebody messaged me and was like, hey, can you put this in a book? And I was like, I never really thought about that. Like I just wanted to share this message. I wanted to share what I had learned. And then as I kept going with the questions, I had dozens and dozens of requests to put it in a book, because while it's nice to do it interacting with video form, people wanted something physical that they could hold on to, that they could write their thoughts in. And so it wasn't until that moment that I was like, okay, I'm going to document this in a book. And it was a lot more difficult than I thought, because articulating your thoughts verbally are a lot different than putting them into writing in a way that's cohesive and makes sense. But that's really how the book was born. And I think that this year was really an embodiment of sometimes you have to let loose, like let go of the control of what you think is supposed to happen and how you're supposed to share your message, and let intuition and just the universe guide the way. Yeah. And so, yeah, that was the journey to the book. It's very untraditional. It wasn't like, I'm going to write a book today and people will read this. But I realized as soon as I started sharing the questions that it was a message that the world was ready to hear and a conversation that people were wanting to engage with. And so I wanted to create something that people can continue to do so. So that's how the book came to be.
That's beautiful. I love that it started as almost like a passion project for yourself. You didn't expect to write a book and make money from it. You wanted to understand. your perspective and then help others create the same feeling. And you were bringing so much value in something that you cared about that it ultimately led to the product.
Thank you.
That's
it's
like working
crazy.
yourself backwards too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely crazy to see a physical manifestation of thoughts that I had been thinking for a really long time. And I think in some ways scary. Like before I actually released the book and we shipped out the first copy, I was so nervous because there's something about having your words, that version of me, immortalized in writing for people to hold and take home
Right.
and read, and it's vulnerable. But I'm really glad for the whole journey and experience. I think one of the best parts is it connected me with so many people on Instagram from all over the world, and just having genuine, meaningful conversations with people that I wouldn't have otherwise talked to.
Right. And the way you've structured it is so great as well, because it's so like digestible in that way as well, because it's begin, acknowledge. What's the third one?
Release.
Release and rebuild.
Yes.
How did you break that down? Was it initially like structured that way, or did it just like happen to fall in line that way?
When I was first deciding that I wanted to share, I did know that I wanted to break it down into those first parts. And it's actually funny because the first question that I started with on my videos was, what do you need to forgive yourself for? And the reason that I started with that question is because self-forgiveness really does pave a way for new understandings and growth. And it was a decision that I had made the day prior because I had wanted to share myself more, and I was scared to. I was standing in my own way, and you know, the should've, would've, could've's were eating me alive, and I'm like, you should have shared this sooner. You should have been posting this on social media. You shouldn't have stopped what you were doing. And the day before I posted my first video, I journaled and was like, I'm choosing to forgive myself for things that I did not do in the past, because the only way I can move forward is through this. And so to start on that question was very personal to me as well. And I think that what a lot of people didn't realize about the questions is that I was saying them for others, but I was also interacting with them myself too, because I'm overcoming fears. I still fight silent battles, and I'm trying to show up the best that I can. And so it was really an embodiment of my personal thoughts going on at the time too. But ultimately, structuring the phases, I learned a lot too through my time spent interviewing people. It's really hard to rebuild what you don't understand, which is why that acknowledgement phase is so important. We're really trying to mind map and dissect, where did this perspective, which is a vast concept, come from?
It's like building the foundation of what you're going to like recover from.
Exactly. And you know, in some of the early days when I was doing interviews, we would mind map their perspective. And so, you know, people would express an opinion or a belief, and I'm like, okay, let's trace that back. When did you first hear this? Did your mom believe this? Did your dad believe this? What experiences did you have that reinforced this or didn't? And so I knew that just pure acknowledgement had to be its own phase. And it's the longest phase in the book because especially as you get older, the more of your perspective you have to unravel. And I do explicitly say in the book, like, this is not a time of problem solving. We're not fixing anything. We're just simply acknowledging. And that's why I chose to break it up in those phases too, so that you could segment that in your mind and be like, hey, throughout all these questions, I'm not trying to fix anything. I don't need to work on this. I need to feel, I need to express, I need to understand. And then releasing, because there inevitably are parts of our perspective that we inherit, and not all of them are useful to us now. And so what do you need to let go of that's no longer serving you? And then how can you rebuild, equipped with this understanding, what you actually want?
Right. I love that. And one of the things that I really appreciate, I was thinking this like as I was reading it, I love how you share your, or at least like bits and pieces of your perspective and your journey through each question. Because when I would read how you handled things, it helped my brain think of how I would handle it as well. And you sharing, like, not just asking a question and expecting an answer, but asking a question, giving kind of like of how you navigated it, answer within the reading to the question, I think can really help people not only understand their perspective, but also allow them to be able to express it better. Because, you know, like a lot of times we can feel things, but it's really hard. Like if you don't like have like almost like a path or like a nudge to get it from here to here
Right.
is very difficult.
Right.
And if you just like read a sentence, you're like, oh, like I can relate to that in a way, but a little bit differently.
Yes.
It's one of the most like important things because like as I was reading them, I was like, oh man, like how would I answer this? And then as I was reading your answer or just the part that you'd written to it, it helped me so much in just like forming my own perspective on it.
That makes me so glad to hear.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I'm probably going to say that like 100 times.
Thank you.
Because it really is so good.
Thank you.
And the very first question, that what do you need to forgive yourself for? I like when I was like writing that, like I was like almost in tears, like thinking about like little me.
Yeah.
You know,
What came to mind for you?
just and it popped up later, like not even because I was in a hotel room in Anaheim when I was doing the first one, whenever I was there a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we move forward, the self-talk, how do you talk to yourself? And you shared, I don't want to give it away, but an example of how your mom helped you in that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I thought about it again because that's what I was imagining. Like as I was forgiving myself, I was like seeing myself as like a kid, like, and how hard I was on myself.
Yeah.
And understanding why I was so hard on myself as well, because, you know, there are many questions in there, like, how was love expressed to you? Did you feel loved? How did you feel loved? And, I have like a split, right? My mom on one side, she is the best, like unconditional love. That's like the one constant
Yeah.
I've always had. I've never ever like even had like a shadow of a doubt that like she would 100% be there for me no matter what. On the other end, because I was an athlete growing up and I was in a highly competitive, highly like just like intense situation all the time with my dad, accomplishments are what got me love. But not just accomplishments got me love, because everyone, like when you do something good, you get love from everyone, right?
Right. Yeah, you're praised.
But falling short from those accomplishments got me reprimanded. And I don't want to use that word. Let's just say I would never talk to my son that way. And I feel like that really formed how I talk to myself, because I have to accomplish to be like, okay. Make sense?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your experience. I know that these questions are extremely vulnerable, and with you sharing that, I definitely want you to know that you're not alone. Like I've experienced a lot of those same things, and it really is difficult when you feel like you have to base your worth in accomplishments. And I felt the pain of that for a long time, and just the way that the cycles that were on repeat and looping in my head, and it was hurtful. Mm-hmm. It was very hurtful. And it's a difficult thing. I think that, you know, one thing with understanding perspective is just because we become aware of it doesn't mean that it immediately changes. If we've been engaging in a certain cycle of self-talk for X amount of years, it can take time to rewrite the script. And it did take me a lot of time, but yeah, it's a challenging book. I think a lot of the questions in it can be very uncomfortable, but I think what's so powerful about what you just said of like, I would never talk to my son like that. Like you choosing to do better for the generation that came after you is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old is your son?
He's 6.
Oh,
Yeah. He's
so
funny.
sweet.
Yeah, he's funny. But I think the first thing too, like, just like we all have I mean, I'm not saying everybody, some people, I'm not sure if everyone does, but like we're our own worst critic.
Right.
Right. So I think a lot of people can relate to like the negative self-talk. But the first way of like even overcoming that is to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't even acknowledge it, it's almost like you can know that it's there without acknowledging it and continue to do so.
Right.
You can also know that it's there and acknowledge it and continue to do so. But the only way to change the pattern is to acknowledge it. What do you think? How can people understand that and like acknowledge, whether it be that question or just any type of perspective in here? Like that's the first thing that like always came to my mind, like in perspective, is like understanding that you have a perspective because you acknowledge everything else, like where you're coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like I might be talking in circles. I
No,
don't
no,
mean
no.
to.
It does make sense. And I think with that, it's building as much context as you can and really digging a layer deeper. Because, I mean, even with the example you just shared of like speaking to yourself, it's one level to be like, okay, I speak to myself in a certain way, but then to dig a layer deeper and think, why? How were your parents speaking to you? How did they make you feel? Then that helps to unravel that a little bit more and expose the fact that that's a pattern of self-talk that was inherited from somebody before you, your dad. Like, and so I think that by equipping people with that acknowledgement, it's like, I have the power to let go of things that I inherited that are no longer serving me. That's the first script that was going in my mind, because you're young. You have no discretion or control over how your parents are parenting you, but they do leave lasting impressions on us. And so I think that being able to take that understanding a little deeper is what leads to that acknowledgement and true acknowledgement.
Yeah, no, I agree. And which I want to get to this question as well, because it relates to this. And it comes to, there's a saying, and you'll have to like remind me of which question it is in here, but it has like a lot of relation to like everyone's just trying to do their best with what they have.
Yeah.
And where they've come from.
Yeah.
Which I want to believe. But I'm not convinced that everyone is trying to do their best.
I think that's fair. I think that's a hard concept to accept, seeing things that happen in the world, right? Like there are a lot of people do a lot of terrible things, and it's disheartening to see it every day. And you're like, how could that possibly be somebody doing their best?
Right. And I think that in the end, sitting down, if you took anyone in the world and sat them down in this type of like format, we would all be like, yes, I am trying to do my best. But then like situations, emotions, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, different things like trauma come into play in like different situations where maybe as an outsider, it seems like people aren't doing their best, but like in the moment, there's no other option.
Right. And I mean, it's interesting as human beings, and we're interacting and engaging with each other because you see the outward expression of whatever I'm telling you right now with who I am at this point in my life. But in order for you to fully understand the context that's shaping my perspective, that's framing my behavior, there's a whole archive of information and experiences of me that you will never see.
It's a whole unseen life.
And so I think that, you know, when it comes to people doing their best and them express, you know, I genuinely do believe that most people are doing the best they can with the information they have, but it's not until you really understand the context, the experiences. Some people have gone through really awful things that seem unimaginable in my frame and perception of reality.
Yeah.
And you know, certain experiences that I can't imagine what that does
Yeah.
to a person.
Yeah. You know, reading this is really like, I thought this before, but like a lot of times we live in like a world like actually kind of like what we were talking about earlier, just like your environment, right? I think your environment leads to a lot of it. Because as I was answering the environment question, like I've done a really good job of curating an environment where I'm around like-minded people. I'm around positivity. And, you know, I still seek outside, you know, perspectives. Because that's the only way you learn, right? If you know one thing is for sure, the man who knows everything is not going to learn anything else, right? So if you're a know-it-all, you're never going to learn anything else. So you want to always seek other perspectives, but curating like an environment where you feel able to seek those, but have like a safe place almost, right? Like this is like my environment of like good, like where I have my friends and my people who are smart, my people who are growth minded, and my people who are trying to help others and other things, but then also seeking other places. And you can pull in what is beneficial and keep out what is not beneficial.
Yes.
But I think about that sometimes, and there was also a set of circumstances that led me to even be able to curate that.
What were they?
A lot of it's luck, I think. Where I was born, being in America, right? If you've ever, like, people who've never traveled outside of the United States, like, it's a completely different world.
Yes.
You know, not just with opportunity, but just like how things are perceived as well. You know, we have a completely different mindset than most of the rest of the world. People don't understand that. But being born here, and a lot of times I think about that at nighttime, like when I have my son, and we're getting ready for bed, and I'm giving him a bath. He's got a bath, and he's got toys, and he's, you know, got a dad who loves him, you know, and he's putting clean clothes on, and he's getting tucked into like a warm bed, and it's really lucky.
It is, and it's honestly heartbreaking to have exposure to different perspectives and versions of reality that don't have those things. It is heartbreaking. I know that you mentioned, so you mentioned that you were in the military to me. Did you deploy overseas?
I did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that perspective
that's
came from being overseas or
you know,
seeing.
no, I have close ties to lots of my community. I'm very fortunate where even though like the years that I was in the military were all during wartime, my job was safe at all times. I was never put in danger. I never had to see anything that was highly traumatic. I have very good friends that have. My perspective, as far as that goes, has all been self-exploratory.
Gotcha.
Outside of the military. Like when I got out of the military when I was 24.
Okay.
So I was still a child, right? So like 18 to 24, I was a kid. I didn't even really know what was going on at the time. I was there and I was just going to do what I was told pretty much. And then when it was time to get out, it was time to get out. But as I got out, I've just always been very like interested in like the world and people.
That's the anthropology coming in.
It is. Yeah. And places and things. Like when I was a kid, I would ask for atlases for Christmas. This is not a joke. I tell people that and they're like, they think I'm kidding. No, like I would ask for a globe and an atlas. And I would just look at them. Like when we were on road trips, like I would be the navigator. This is a funny story. when I was 9, we took a road trip, and it was me and my mom and my brother and my sister. So I was 9, my sister was 7, and that means my brother was 5. And we were driving from West Virginia to Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is where Pope Air Force Base is, and that's where my aunt lived. And so
It's a long drive.
yeah, it was like probably 10 or 11 hours, but I read the map. This was 92. So I read the map, and I told my mom how to get there the whole time. So I've been able to read a map forever, but I've always really been interested in people, places, things, but not only that, but like how and why we all interact with one another. And I think even though like I didn't deploy and I didn't get to see like the horrors of what war is, thank God, firsthand, knowing that, being connected like by one person away, right? 7 degrees, right? It's 1 degree of separation. Right. Really sparked, I want to say a curiosity, but not just a curiosity, but like a need to understand in my mind. And I think that's a big reason why like I chose anthropology and I chose geography, and I watch documentaries and like all these things. It's because like I have this deep need to understand people.
What do you think, like taking it a layer deeper, what do you think is fueling that curiosity?
I think I've always been that way. When I loved making friends when I was a kid. This is actually kind of a funny story too. And it's partially like, it's like a good and a bad story, right? So I grew up wrestling, like highly competitive. Like I have thousands of wrestling matches. Like every weekend, instead of watching cartoons, I was in my underwear weighing in.
Wrestling's one of the most interesting sports to watch.
So I was wrestling, and like winning was very important. It was important to my dad. And it was important to me because it was important to him. And I was good at it, so I did it a lot. But I always made friends with the other wrestlers. And he used to call me Casper the Friendly Wrestler, because like he would try to like get in my head about it, like want me to like be like mean, but I couldn't do it. Like I always was like super interested, and we traveled a lot. So like I got to see like where we were and like relation to other people. And I got to like meet kids from all around the country and understand like, and listen, they all had different accents, and like they all had like different ways of like how they styles of wrestling and everything like that. So that helped me like really understand that as well. But I was always curious about other people, because I think I just like learning about other people.
Do you feel like there's something or like a part of you that wants to express your findings or like where your curiosity has led you ever?
I mean, yeah.
In what ways?
I mean, this.
Yeah.
A lot of times people ask me why I wanted to do a podcast, and I was like, I just have so much in my head that like, you know, I want to express. And sometimes it's hard to get out like in a way that's digestible that people can understand. But I think, you know, any different forms of art is a great way to do it. Whether it be like video art, writing, martial art, different things. And I've done many of those before. I'm not really sure what the next step is of like how I can express or like help or just continue to learn, you know, continue to travel. I just went to Mexico City by myself.
How was that?
It was amazing. And I was only there for 4 days, but I did a competition, and I, you know, toured the city, and I've always been like super like interested in like Latin culture and Mexican culture in particular, because I grew up in, or not grew up, but like I spent a lot of time in like South Texas. All my friends are Mexican American. Like all the girls that I dated were like, you know, like, so I've always been very interested in that. But I loved Mexico because because I like exploring unknown things, and
It's
I like
fun.
seeing other people. And it's fun because like I wish other people had like that type of curiosity, or maybe not just the type of curiosity, but like the willingness to go explore it, because maybe people want to, but they're scared, right? But of course, I know that I'm privileged in like I'm a man who's trained in combat, so like I
that
can
makes it a
travel
little
alone,
easier.
and it's okay. But another question in your book was like, how comfortable are you being alone?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a 10 out of 10.
Ooh, were you always a 10 out of 10, or did it take a period for you to grow into being comfortable alone?
I think it probably took a period. When I went into the military, that was what changed, because I was alone a lot. Like when you're 18, 18's a child to me still, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're young. You're just becoming an adult. And then, and I know that there are so many people who have experienced this, right? So I don't want to act like I'm special because of it. But you take an 18-year-old kid and you put him 2,000 miles away from home, where he doesn't have any friends, and who knows what's going to happen and things of that nature. So a lot of times when I went home, instead of going home to like a family or like roommates or something like that, I would go home to an empty dorm room. And it was sad a lot.
Yeah.
And I was homesick a lot. But I've turned it into almost like a superpower, because it was a necessity and was forced upon me. It's become comfortable.
Yes. And it is a superpower. It's really important to be able to spend time alone. Not all the time, because we are social creatures and interaction is very important, but I think that I say in the book, you can't understand yourself or get to know yourself if you're always running from yourself. And so being able to take that time, be comfortable in your solitude, and not just alone physically, alone with your mind. Because I think a lot of people are comfortable alone with distractions. And so that's why I have this retreat that I am like guiding people. I have this guide for, and I specifically say in there, like, not on your phone, not watching TV, not playing video games, because all of these things are taking us away from ourselves.
Yeah.
How comfortable are you alone with your thoughts, with your internal world, with engaging and interacting with your mind?
Yeah.
And it's not always easy. It's sometimes very uncomfortable, depending on what space you're in, what experiences you've had.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was young too, I've had like multiple blogs, right, where I've written and then deleted everything, and then written and deleted.
Oh, vlogs about what?
Just dumb stuff, but like how I felt. What was the one? I forget which one. I had a blog in like 2003. Like a bunch of, like I had made friends like in the Air Force, and like a bunch of different people. Like we all had like, it's my journal or something like that. It was like when online blogging was like brand new.
Yeah.
And and even like pen to paper, I would write a lot. I don't know where any of these writings are anymore, but I feel like that's a really way to help yourself be more comfortable with yourself, because it's really hard to sit, like doing meditation and yoga and things like that, like, and keep everything internally, right? Because I would say, like, if you have a distraction like a phone or a video game or something, that's not being alone. But if you have a pen and a pad and you can express things externally, I would consider that still being alone,
Absolutely.
but having an outlet.
Absolutely. A lot of the time that I spend alone is journaling or art. I love drawing or, dancing. I wouldn't say that I'm good at it, but sometimes it's a way to express myself. But yes, I think that any form of self-expression is a way to engage with yourself, with your thoughts, with your emotions. And it's really important for people to get to a place where they're comfortable with that.
Yeah. I think it's really important to always, like, there's another one in there. It's like, when's the last time you were a beginner or you started something new?
When was the last time you had a beginner's mind?
I love that one. I thought, is that a question?
Yeah.
Oh, recently. So I So I took Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4 in college. I didn't really learn anything. I was never conversational. I was a Spanish minor. I took advanced Spanish composition, and it was so hard that I was like, I switched my minor to anthropology.
Learning another
Yeah.
language is so difficult.
So like I've known words and stuff like that, but like last year I was like, I'm gonna learn how to speak Spanish. And so I started in April, and I've like practiced my Spanish every single morning when I wake up for the last 220 days.
Are you on Duolingo? You gotta do it.
Yeah.
I'm on Duolingo.
Yeah.
I'll add you as a friend.
Yeah. And so I'm like
That's amazing.
good now. Like I have conversations in Spanish only every day. And when I went to Mexico, this was like the my thing I was most proud about is that I didn't use English.
That's really
Like,
impressive.
When I meet people, I tell them in Spanish, like you have to speak slow to me for me to understand, but I can't speak with you. And so
I love that.
within the last, what was that? April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So within the last 8 months, I've gone from like knowing words to like being able to hold like a conversation.
You're inspiring me right now because I'm actually learning Spanish too. I'm
Yeah.
on day 30 of my Duolingo streak, so I got a long way to go to catch up. But
That's good though.
I'm Hispanic, part Hispanic, and my mom speaks Spanish, my grandpa speaks Spanish, her brothers and sisters speak Spanish, and none of like the next generation speak Spanish. I mean, a couple here and there, but most of us don't. And I was in the car, and my mom and grandpa and my uncle were talking, and they're all speaking Spanish. I'm like, how do I not understand what they're saying? I need to learn this right now. So I got back on Duolingo. I'm learning. I feel like I'm definitely familiar. My ear is attuned to it because I grew up hearing it. And so I do know quite a few words, but I would say that I'm still a ways away from like fully being conversational. But
Right.
I'm excited. Duolingo this is so funny. This is a little sidetracked, but the little widget on the home screen kills me every day. Like sometimes I like will wait till the end of the day to like do my streak just because it's so funny to watch it throughout the day. Like it has a house on fire burning in the back and the birds like.
Oh yeah, they're dramatic.
It's so dramatic, but it's like a small little piece of joy and entertainment for me. But
it is.
I get the streak done.
Yeah, that's what it's about. And that's the thing too, is like just like consistently doing it.
Yeah.
And putting in the time, right? Like you can extend your streak by doing one lesson into 3 minutes.
Yes.
But you're not going to like really understand, retain, and learn. That's what like I try to do like 30 minutes minimum. But if I can do an hour, I'll do an hour.
That's a good time investment.
Yeah. Like
That's
I have
impressive.
invested a lot of time in it. But it's working.
That's amazing.
And it's what I was talking to my mom, and I was like, learning Spanish has really built my confidence because now I can do anything. I literally learned a new language in 10 months.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like the best, but all my friends say I'm pretty good.
No, that's amazing, and it just shows you the power of your mind and what it can do, and that's
You can do
repeatable for anything.
If you can learn a new language, you can teach your brain to do anything.
Exactly.
And we're so just like dynamic and capable. But the first way to like even be able to do that is to believe that you can do that.
Absolutely.
Confidence. What do you think are like for you? Obviously, it's probably different for everyone. What are some of the things that have been most like crucial for you in like building the confidence to just be able to take on the world?
Following through on the things you say you're going to do. Don't let yourself down. I think that, it's so important to stick true to your word. And even if it's something small, if you say you're going to get up at a certain time, get up at a certain time. If you say you're going to go work out today, go work out today.
You're Speaking my language.
For me, my word is like law. Like if I said I'm going to do something, if I wrote it down, it will be done, which I think can be daunting sometimes, because sometimes I'm like, I'm kind of scared to write this down because I know I got to do it. But I think that that's one of the easiest ways to build confidence and trust in yourself, is holding yourself accountable.
Keep your promises to you.
Yep.
And I use this a lot too. It's like, would you continue being friends with someone who continually said they were going to do something and didn't do it?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Or at least you'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
keep your word to you.
It's interesting because it's like we know what we expect and want when we engage in a relationship with other people, whether it's platonic or whether it's romantic. But then when it comes to the relationship with ourselves, people want to write a whole new set of rules as if they're not the same. It's like, okay, would you speak to your friend like that?
Yeah.
No. Why would you speak to yourself like that?
Right.
Would you flake out on your friend like that? No. Okay, then why are you doing that to yourself? It's the same thing engaging in a relationship with yourself as it is for other people. And I think that when you reframe that, it's a lot easier to see why those things are important.
Yeah. I said this in a podcast earlier, but we're the easiest people to lie to. Lying to yourself is, until you have that boundary where you're like, no, I just don't do this anymore. No excuse making, no nothing. It gets done.
Yeah.
Yes. Man, so many, we still got 10 minutes left.
Okay. I'm like, this hour is flying by. I've actually really been enjoying this conversation.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, I was just thinking that a minute ago. I was like, I haven't even touched on half the things that I have written down, just because it's been so easy to just dynamically and just naturally bounce from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
I really like how your brain works, and I like how you communicate what you think. I think it's super beneficial.
Thank you.
For everyone. So what do you think was it's hard to say the one, right? But for you, what was the most profound question of the 100, or maybe you can narrow it down to a couple that were really game changers, in just your perspective and thought process? What were some of the most profound ones that you're oh man, this is a banger?
Well, I'm gonna answer this question based off of public responses, because I can see how people are engaging and answering the questions as I did the 100 Days of Questions, which ones really helped people connect the dots. There were 3 that really, I feel hit home to people and were okay, now I understand. The first one, what were you praised for as a child, and how consistent patterns of praise form the development of an identity. And I ran a poll on social media that I think 12,000 people responded to. And it's were you praised for your looks? Were you praised for accomplishments? Were you not praised at all? Were you praised for traits? And overwhelmingly 50% of the votes said praised for accomplishments. And you can see that in manifesting itself in today's society. And so I think that for sure was a question that really, I think, got people more interested in the 100 Days of Questions as well, because it helped them connect the dots. And the next question was, what is your emotional home? And this is something that, Tony Robbins talks about, but whatever your emotional home is, that's the place that you're going to continue to default to. And so becoming aware of what are the habitual emotions that, because my brain's on autopilot, I'm habitually returning to. I think really helped people understand and also empower people that you have discretion over whatever you want your emotional home to be. It might be a journey to change the home, but becoming aware of that can be very empowering. And then lastly, the other question is, what resentment are you still hanging on to? And I had found this article that really broke down resentment, and even breaking down the Latin root of resentment, it means, to relive. And so resenting is reliving past pain. And I think that, by understanding that, it becomes evident why it's important to forgive. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person you're forgiving is worthy of it. Maybe they did something awful, but for your sake, for your own benefit, what do you need to forgive for so that you're not continuously living in a cycle of past pain?
Right. I'm so happy you said that, because I wanted to talk to you about this. Forgiveness was one of like the big things that I wanted to touch on. And I'm so happy that you answered that way, because it completely, like throughout our conversation, I forgot about it. Forgiveness is tough.
Yes.
For me, probably for a lot of people.
I would say most people.
Do you think that forgiveness is different for everyone? Is there like a standard, like what forgiveness means? Because like they say, like if you hold a grudge against someone, it's like holding a hot coal and hoping it burns them.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want hate or anger or resentment to like burn you up inside, because that's what it'll do. But do you think it's okay? You can forgive and forget, right? So like, for instance, like a relationship, right? Like I forgive this person, but because I forgive this person doesn't mean that like, even like in the closest relationships, like father, son, brother, sister, mother, daughter, you can forgive without continuing a relationship with this person. Like drop it completely.
Yeah. I do think that forgiveness and the execution of forgiveness can look different for different people, because forgiveness is an emotional release, right? I'm choosing to release myself from this, and the ways in which people release themselves from difficult emotions can look different for different people. But ultimately, I think that, you know, one key thing that I feel like I want people to understand about forgiveness is that I think that when we're younger, we're not properly taught to interact with what the choice of forgiveness is. Like, for example, like you and your siblings are fighting, and your mom's like, okay, go forgive your brother, go forgive your sister. And it makes it feel like it's something that I have to do for the benefit of the other person. Like I have to forgive them. I have to put myself on the back burner because I'm giving this to them. When in reality, forgiveness is a choice, a conscious choice that we make for ourselves and our peace. And it is a choice, and it's one that people come to when they're ready. You can't force an emotional release. You can't force forgiveness. But when you do make that choice, it's something that's going to allow you to get to the other side of emotions that are creating barriers or holding you back.
Yeah. I just think this because I can reference a relationship in my life where I've forgiven, gone back, got burned, forgave again, gone back, got burned, forgave again. And I'm to the point now where many people would think that I have not forgiven because I don't engage. But on my end, I'm not mad anymore.
Yeah. And that's all that matters.
However, I won't give any type of energy to this person anymore. And that to me is forgiveness.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't look like it from many people.
I think that, like, if there are still emotions manifesting or creating barriers, even if it's not between you and another person, but between you and another part of yourself, then that's something to work to release. But forgiveness doesn't mean that you can't set boundaries around yourself either. Like, I think it depends on the nature of the relationship, the situation. And that's the thing with a lot of these questions. There's a lot of variables, right? Because there's a lot of different experiences. There's a lot of people's life's stories. And ultimately, the goal is for you to pull out the information that you need to make the decision that you feel like is going to be in alignment with your life. Because, I mean, I know what forgiveness looks like for me. I know what a lot of the answers to this question looks like for me, but that's my life. I'm operating within my realm of reality and perspective, and that's going to look different for every person that picks that up.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times because this does such a good job of digging deeper, you can answer a question and then answer another question, but have thought deeper about it, and it gives you a new perspective of how you can expand on like another emotion or like an answer to the previous question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And for me, I still find myself answering these questions, and it's interesting to see the progression of answers as I cycle through different versions of Sadie. Like I through my life will continue to
Yeah.
grab a book, fill out the book throughout the year and see how, what did this version of Sadie respond to this? What did success mean to her at this point in time? Was she in touch with her intuition? What did that mean for her at this age? Because we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving, and my concept of self and who I am right now in this very moment, in a year from now, is going to look very different.
Yeah. I thought about that. I was filling the first couple out. I was doing like the whole thing. I was like, I might need to leave some space.
No, you get a new one.
And go back.
You can file them and be like, hey, this was me at this age.
Yeah.
Me at this
That
age.
makes sense. Cool. Well, we're over an hour already.
That's crazy. That went by so fast.
I know. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting this into what it is, because everyone should have this. I think it's so good. I know I've said this so many times, but I'm so happy that like I have one, because it helps me with me. And, a lot of times people I'm a go-getter and I compete and I try to be the best. I want to be the best dad. I want to be the best everything. I need help with me. I know I do. And if I do, I know other people do too. So thank you.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough just for your kind words, and it just makes me so happy seeing you hold the book. Like, I feel like when I see the book in people's hands, like it almost brings me to tears. Feel like you're carrying a piece of me around with you. But,
That's great.
I really appreciate you. I appreciate this interview, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me
I
too.
love the work that you're doing and creating meaningful conversations.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, we will definitely have more conversations in the future.
Deal.
All right, guys. I hate that I had to cut this short at an hour. I think we could do multiple hours, but get the book, Dimensions, Sadie Sanchez. She's Sadie T. Sanchez on Instagram. You have it linked, right?
Yeah.
You can get it linked from her IG. A definite must buy for, I think everyone should have it. Makes a great Christmas gift as well, or New Year's gift, since it's almost that time. But guys, thank you so much for being here. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. I know you did, and continue to come back and tune in. We'll see you again next week.